Kris, what is our fifth main topic today?
This is from Mr. Shamus. Hello, John, or Rob, or Kris, whoever's reading this. Justin, we hear from the man himself, Gus Fring, that he has sat down and talked to Marvel about playing some characters such as Magneto or Doctor Doom, but most notable, Charles Xavier. Thoughts? Also, I've been listening to you guys for a year, and you inspired me to want to work in the movie industry.
Aw.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Shamus. And yeah, listen, Giancarlo Esposito is one of those guys that when he pops up in a project, you just know you're going to love whatever it is he's doing that. It doesn't matter if it's Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul or what's the video game he's...
Oh, Far Cry 6.
Yeah, so like whether it's in Far Cry or whether it's in... There was this show he did about, I think it only lasted 1 or 2 seasons, about all the power went out in the planet, all the power went out in the world, and what happens to the world if it gets knocked back. He was a main character in that. He was fantastic in that, obviously in Mandalorian and whatever else he appears in. He's great. And I remember, it was probably about 2 years ago, maybe longer, that on our show we talked about, you know who would make a great new Magneto? Giancarlo Esposito would make a great Magneto. And I still believe that to this day. I think he'd make a fabulous Magneto. But apparently he has been talking to the folks over at Marvel, and that has come up, but so has a couple of other characters. This comes to us from the folks over at Variety, who wrote the following. I have not worked for Marvel yet, says Giancarlo Esposito. I've been in a room with them and talked to them. There's been talk of Magneto. There's been talk of Doctor Doom. And there's Professor X. I'm going to go for something that is a little bit different. I'm going to put it out there in the universe, and that is Professor X. So, Giancarlo, now it sounds like it was pretty informal, at least the way, like I'm just interpreting this, but my interpretation of what he's just saying there, it sounds pretty informal. He says, like, I've been in a room, we've talked about it. You know, names like Magneto have come up, Doctor Doom has come up. Charles Xavier, though, the idea of playing Charles Xavier is pretty appealing to me. Now, look. Let me kind of lay the groundwork on this and say the following. I am one of these people that I believe 95% of characters out there, it doesn't matter what race plays them, what the ethnic background of the actor who's playing them. Actors play people that they aren't. Now, I do believe that where I make an exception for that, and you guys have heard me say this 1,000 times, is when the ethnic background of the character is pivotal to understanding what that character is all about. If the ethnic background of that character is absolutely essential to understanding what that character is all about, then fine. But 95% of the characters out there, their ethnic background is not a monumental, essential element to understanding that character. I would give, here's a couple of examples of some exceptions I would make. Obviously, Black Panther, right? T'Challa, that's clearly an exception. I believe Batman, at least the Bruce Wayne iteration of Batman, because that is a character, to understand what he has become, you have to understand that Bruce Wayne comes from a position of absolute privilege. And therefore, I think his ethnic background is relevant to that. So there's a couple of examples of some things I would consider to be exceptions. But 95% of the time, I'd be fine with it. And so when you look at the character of Charles Xavier, there is nothing about that character that you can't possibly understand this character unless you get the fact that he's white, right? So I honestly don't care if we have an Asian Charles Xavier. I don't care if we have an Aboriginal Charles Xavier. If you actually know this character, you understand that the character's race has nothing to do with the essential core elements of who and what makes that character up. I believe the same is also true of Magneto. So I'd be fine with that. Although, you know what? I hadn't really thought of Doctor Doom. And all of a sudden he's bringing up Dr. Doom, and I'm like, oh, wait, I hadn't really thought about that. That could also, that could be pretty interesting too. Look, Marvel would be richer regardless, just having Giancarlo Esposito playing just about anything. You know, I always say adding talent is never a mistake. He's one of the best talents in the world right now. Now, I've talked about this on Twitter a little bit, and then a couple of people respond on Twitter saying, how about this? Giancarlo Esposito's Professor X, Denzel Washington as Magneto.
That's what I want.
And I'm like, or vice versa. I could totally see Denzel Washington as a Charles Xavier type and a Giancarlo, like whatever. I mean, just seeing those two play off each other, would be a pretty good time in a movie theater. Look, none of this is confirmation. Like we hear these stories all the time that, yeah, I've had conversations. Conversations are great, but 1 in 100 actually lead to something. But I think if you canvassed a lot of film fandom, they would love to see Giancarlo in the Marvel Cinematic Universe or in the DC Universe or whatever. But these are some interesting names. I like the Charles Xavier one, although I got to admit, Kris, if I'm in Kevin Feige's war room, and it comes around me and says, what's your vote? Who do we have Giancarlo play? I would personally still lean towards Eric. I would lean towards Magneto personally, but I don't think it would be a wrong decision to have him play Charles either. I don't know. You hear about this. What stands out to you with this comments?
Oh, I love him as Charles. I think that'd be wonderful. Just that voice alone. Ooh, that voice going through Cerebro. Come on. That'd be killer. It'd be so, so good. Plus, he's played a lot of villains, and Charles Xavier, as you go through the comics, does become a much more morally gray character. I mean, we swap at some points where Magneto is the good guy, and Charles is making some very, very questionable choices. I will say, as far as the casting goes, I think it's wonderful for him. For Magneto, we do still need to live in a world where I think the atrocities of genocide have to play into that character so you do understand it. And whether that means he's a Holocaust survivor, which if we want this to be a current day story, we then have to make a note of how, his mutation gives him like a more youthful appearance or longer life or something like that so we don't have a, 100-and-something-year-old man as our main villain, or you place it in Rwanda or something like that, like we've discussed on the show too. So I think something like that does have to factor into the understanding of Magneto's character if there is going to be a recasting and reworking of his backstory. That's just the big thing for me. You put these actors in there, though, it's going to be so great. I listened to this podcast called Off Book, and they were talking about, like, being Charles Xavier is just prestige casting. Like, you're just a better actor. Like, you become much more notable the minute where it's like, oh man, Patrick Stewart and James McAvoy have gotten to play Charles Xavier. Oh my gosh, these gentlemen who have gotten to be Magneto. Oh, how wonderful and glorious for them. It's like the opposite of most casting for comic book movies. It's just like, seems to be like an integrity move. So I'm excited either way. If he's in any of these roles, we're in good luck.
See, I've had a lot of conversations online. I'm still, and I might change my mind on this, but right now I'm still kind of stuck in the whole idea of, I got to admit, I hate the idea of changing the character of Magneto, like giving him mutant powers that he's never had, just so we can say that was the atrocity he came out of. Like, remember, for the first, 20 years that the Magneto character was around, he didn't have that background. Like, I don't think it was until after Magneto was around 15 to 20 years that they even introduced the idea that he was a Holocaust survivor. So I don't even think that was a part of the character initially. So I like keeping those core essential elements to the characters, and Magneto having a mutant ability of slow aging. That's never been one of his powers. And I really kind of bristle at just giving him power.
Well,
but then again, to be fair, what did they just do to Ms. Marvel? They totally changed her powers.
Yeah.
And the effect was great. So maybe I'm not as stringent on that. Don't change their power. Maybe I'm not as stringent on that as I thought, because with Ms. Marvel, it totally worked.
And as long as we get, Ben Grimm being proudly Jewish, I feel like that would be helpful, right? Because representation matters across all boards here. And so I just want to make sure that, all the storytelling is done thoughtfully and with care, and that everyone still gets to see themselves in these characters.
Yeah. And again, just from a talent perspective, it would be such a win to get him in there. But again, I got to say the Doctor Doom one isn't bad either.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? Giancarlo Esposito has said he's spoken with people in Marvel about things like Magneto, like Doctor Doom, like Professor Charles Xavier. He seems to really want to play Charles. Like you're thinking to yourself, who can really follow up on, Patrick Stewart, right? James McAvoy was a different era one and all that kind of stuff, but I think he's a guy who could do it. Again, many other actors who could do a fabulous job with it as well. I'm just going to get kind of excited about this one. Whatever you guys think, jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. We want to take a second to thank the sponsor of today's video, Raycon. Now guys, you've heard me talk about the fact that part of my morning routine is getting on my treadmill, and when I do, I always have my Raycon earbuds there to listen to my podcasts and YouTube videos. I go to them every morning. Raycon's everyday earbuds look, feel, and sound better than ever. With optimized gel tips for the perfect in-ear fit, these earbuds are so comfortable and they will not budge. Trust me. Raycon gives you 8 hours of playtime and 32-hour battery life. And the best part for me is that Raycons are priced just right. You get quality audio at half the price of other premium audio brands. That's half the price. And with premium features like noise isolation, awareness mode, and I personally love the earbud tap functions, it's perfect for when I'm on the treadmill. So guys, go to buyraycon.com/Campea today and get 15% off your Raycon order. That's buyraycon.com/Campea to get 15% off. buyraycon.com/Campea.